Hi, it's Dawn from Dawn's Joke. There can mean gardening, there can mean animals, there can mean politics, there can mean religion, there can mean anything we want it to mean. And I'm so excited to have my friend Lisa here. She's from Fearless Changemakers. I met her the other day at a barter pay event, and we got to talking and connecting and building bridges. And I just loved Lisa and our conversation, and I just wanted to share it with my listeners. So welcome here, Lisa.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Yeah. I'm really excited about this conversation. And so could you tell us just a little bit about yourself and who you are and how we connected and where you're at?
Sure. Do you want the long story or the short story?
Whatever you want to. We've got an hour. So
There we go.
yeah.
Well, I am Lisa Szabon-Smith. I am an Albertan born and raised and proud Canadian as well. Part of that pride, I've been an athlete my entire life. And so I took that Canadian pride into representing Canada on the national bobsleigh team as a pilot for bobsleigh, of course, and trying to compete in the 2010 Olympics, of which I had the better gift of being able to be a forerunner instead. So I got to experience what 1% of that athlete world gets to experience instead. So it's far more unique, in my opinion. I might be softening the blow of not qualifying for the Olympics, but it turned out to be such a great experience. And through that, I realized that by choosing to sit back and just kind of let things happen as they should happen, I realized that not being politically engaged, because newsflash, high-level sports is majority politics over ability and skill set, but not being engaged really kind of set me back a little bit and set some of my other teammates back as well. Just that lack of ability to advocate for ourselves, to speak up when we realize that something is not operating the way it should or as justly as we feel like things should be. And then, of course, my life evolved through that. A graphic designer by trade. And I think that has led to where I kind of start seeing marketing ploys before most people catch on. I know when it's a sunlight commercial based on the yellow that they show or the activity commercial based on the green and so forth. I understand a lot of that and the language behind things. So that made navigating through the last 5 years a little bit interesting as well, because you start to pick up on the nuances and the red flags, really. And so from there, experienced a lot of things. I was a gym owner, had to close my gym. Life changed, things switched. We made lots of big moves to try and respond and just adapt to the new way of living. And in all of that, witnessing everybody's angst and frustration and just that complete divide that has started to happen and now is quite visible, truly, it really started to piss me off. And I really got just so fed up with everybody being fed up and not being able to have proper conversations and not being able to approach things from a point of curiosity and saying I don't quite understand why this rule is here. Maybe I should ask some more questions. We would just follow and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Or on the flip side, be the angry teenager and rebel and say, F you, I'm not going to do this. So I found that communication and respectful communication and advocacy, which in the end, advocacy is just representing something that we believe in or that we support strongly. Those things were falling off the wayside. And now I don't think they're there or we're not comfortable with it anymore. And so here I am now with Fearless Changemakers on a mission to try and bring that back and remind people that we used to be able to sit around a table, all really good friends, having thoughtful conversations with various viewpoints and still walking away as friends. Whereas, unfortunately, I think some of us have lost relationships because our views didn't align perfectly. And it's sad to see. So that's me in a nutshell anyways.
That's how we connected. Actually, we started talking about these hard conversations and these hard things around COVID and the disconnect in society. We've seen I'm right and you're wrong and you're right and I'm wrong. And COVID really brought that out and really divided us as people. And yeah, that's why you're here today, is because I have seen that going on with people. And I'm like, we need to stop this. We need to start having conversations and realizing you might be different than me. You might have a different perspective than me, but that's okay. And we can still love each other and we can still be kind to each other and we can still respect each other and not have to have this division and this, I'm just so tired of the polarity and the pull, left and right and religion and non-religion, like all of it. Like we just need to start loving each other again and respecting each other.
Do you remember the toilet paper wars of 2020? Are you worried about being prepared in an emergency? Are you tired of being a slave to the corporations we purchase from? It's time to take control. Become ungovernable. Take your food system into your own hands. Hi, I'm Dawn, a coach dedicated to helping you live like grandma used to. Self-reliant, resourceful, and prepared. Whether it's raising chickens, growing a garden, canning your own food, or even milking a cow, I'll teach you how to thrive and survive in the space you have, big or small. We can even potentially make some money off your homestead. Visit Dawn's Dirt today to book your free jumpstart call. Together, as a team, we can get you self-reliant and ungovernable. We, the people, have the power to take back control. Remember, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Let's build a better future and a community, one skill set at a time.
100%. It's got to come from the heart. We need to get back to the heart truly and start realizing like, okay, they have a different political viewpoint, but I still really love them. And so how do I allow my love to be the thing that supersedes our differences? Or better yet, how can I learn from them better so that it's just like it's an even deeper love? I mean, married couples, the ones who succeed and last for the 25, 50-year range, it's because they learned how to better understand each other through all of our changes and all like we evolve. And we don't always evolve in unison with each other. However, if we can start to love and just be like, no, my love is strong enough to be able to overcome the differences or like the mass confusion I'm surrounding around this person, we will get through it. But we have to be able to commit to that too and know that there's some effort involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went for coffee just last week or the week before with one of my friends. I've known this individual for 10, 15 years already. And this individual is now trans. And so we were having coffee and I said to them yet again, I said, what did I say? I said, my opinion is irrelevant. Like it's my job to love you. So even though I don't necessarily agree with you, I love you anyway. And this individual kind of got their backs up against the wall and they were like, and they wanted to say something. And I said, I'm a Bible-believing Christian. You don't believe in that, and you don't agree with that, and you still love me. And they just settled right back down, and they were like, yep, that's true.
Yeah.
And so it was just taking the division out of it. Like, we don't have to agree. We don't have to, but we do have to love each other. Have to, but it's a genuine thing. I've loved this individual right through the whole process and right through all of it. And so, yeah, like it's taking the issue out of the relationship, right? And just building the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's also even like complete strangers, right? We're going to come across situations where we're not going to agree on something, but we can still hold a place for them. We don't have to love them. We don't have to become their best friend, but we can still hold a place for them because in the end, we're human beings. We want to be heard, seen, at least feel like we're somewhat understood or someone is trying to understand us. And we want to be able to move forward with less walls so that we can actually connect with each other. And it's kind of like the same as we start being in this world of like labels, right? Well, every time we apply a label to ourselves, it's one more thing that can be taken away. It's like, I am an athlete. Well, I could be completely injured. I could become a paraplegic. Well, that definition, or quadriplegic, and that definition now is basically taken away. So we need to understand that our human definitions should not be on things that are taken away. It should be that I am a deeply passionate, caring, motivated individual. We can't take any of those away from me, because if that's who I am at the core, then I'm going to present that regardless actually of what my belief system is, because that's who I am.
Yeah, no, yeah, wow, that is actually profound to me because I was a farmer and that was my whole identity. And last year when I had to sell my farm, I've had to reinvent myself really in some ways. But what it hasn't changed is, yes, my love of people, my my passion for food and local farming and helping others get good food. And yeah, so at the core, yes, I was a farmer, but that's not it. It's the fundamental principles underneath, the characteristics, the character underneath that defines who I am. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty wow. You need this to be a counseling session right in my podcast.
They always end up being that way. It's all good. It's a good conversation, right? Because we're growing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's just it. That's the key, is growth. Every person is changing, every person is developing, and just learning from one another. Yeah, during COVID, especially, like walking, I was an anti-masker, but I was kind anti-masker. I was a different anti-masker. And I just want to touch on something you were saying earlier, because people were getting so up in the air and so like, I'm right and you're wrong. I anti-masked around stores and I would walk in without my mask, but I was kind, because if I saw someone down an aisle and they were wearing a mask and I wasn't, I did not get into their bubble. I stayed more than 6 feet away, because that's, what they needed from me, is they needed to not be near me. And I respected them. And I would, if I needed to get past them, I would say to them, I'm not wearing a mask. You are wearing a mask. We have different belief systems. Do you feel comfortable if I turn my back and walk past you? And they would say yes or no. And it was fine. Yeah. It's just building the bridges and meeting someone else where they're at. And just being kind. It's respect. It's respect is really what it is. I'm respecting them for their belief system, and they in turn didn't get into my face because I was kind about it,
Yeah.
And they didn't get into my
being like, oh, you sheeple and whatever else, right? There were so many levels of our very primitive response to the psychology behind all of it. I'll preface like, my family, we were in a position, we didn't need to go into any of the extremes. We were able to sit back and watch for quite some time, to go into a lot of the research. And I have thank goodness, because of my sport background, being a personal trainer in the past, having that knowledge within the medical world, I was able to decipher a lot of the medical documentation myself. And then also, thankfully, I have a lot of people through all of my branches that I could be like, I don't understand this. Can you help break it down for me? And they would. So through that, we were able to make a informed decision rather than one that felt very forceful and bribed in Alberta, where they were handing out tickets to sporting games and $100 per person who got a vaccine and so forth. And to be totally honest, the moment that happened, I was like, it's a big farce for sure, because you would not have to bribe people if it was a actual legitimate necessity. But so we made the choice not to get vaccinated, anti-masked as much as we could. We went and found the muslin masks to make it look like we were doing it, especially if we had to go in an airport or in an incredibly public space. And you choose to avoid certain situations as well. But what was my point? I went off on a big tangent.
It's all good. It's a good conversation. We were talking about respect, and I was talking to the grocery store, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it comes down to that respect piece, but also not forcing our opinion, just really presenting facts if we needed to. In the end, I got hired for a job during the height of the REP time. So when you had to have the paperwork, if you were unvaxxed, to go into a restaurant or whatever, I got hired at the height of the big vaccine push. And it was all because I just plainly stated my thoughts and my concerns. And it was like, right now we're only seeing short-term data. And I know that most of all of these medications require an X amount of time. 10 years is usually like the minimum. And then we start seeing more. And I said, I kind of want to see at least midterm data before I go and commit to this. And it was more so just how I handled the situation that got me the job, that like, it's a part-time job, whatever. But, it was handling that, because it was never a emotional thing. And it was never about me or about the other person. It was just literally about the situation, what I knew and understood, in contrast to what they knew and understood. And I mean, maybe it's because I grew up as a younger child with a very strong-minded older sister. I learned how to just take it in and digest and be like, okay, that's your problem, this is mine, and we'll figure out the middle. But in the end, it's a matter of just being able to build that bridge and show through our own leadership that we can handle these tough situations, or that we can sit down and have these conversations and walk away no different, maybe better, hopefully better.
Yeah. And, you touched on something earlier. You touched on the extremes. And I want to call a light really to the extremes of not only one side, but the other side as well. I'm of the anti-mask, tinfoil hat, whatever. That's where I've kind of set up my camp. That's, and that's okay. But I'm not of the extreme, and I'm not the one, pointing out saying they have to change. But there is extremes, and with both extremes, it's not good. That's where the problems really come in. It's the fringe people, the fringe minority, but but the extreme fringe minority. You know what I mean? Far fringe, like the people not like us. But but that we swing at it from their perspectives too. But like I've had several people say to me, Dawn, I really like talking to you because it lets me see into the other side without the crazy, without the other parts of it. And that's just it. Like, I'm a human being. And so they might be on the other side, but like not on my side, but they can see into and have a perspective and lens through to that side without, I don't even know what the word would be, but without the, with a human being, with a human connection, with a soul and a, conversation and things like that. And so that's the thing. When you meet someone who's different than you or has a different perspective than you, when you as an actual person, it's easy to say, oh, those people over there, when you don't even know them. But when you know somebody, it just changes your whole, it changes everything, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then the big thing is to try and take all of these like human face-to-face interaction skills and apply them when we're on the keyboard behind the screen, able to hide when we're applying our comments into that realm as well. Because, we might be amazing, nice people when we're face to face, but how are you when you're trying to have that interaction online? And that's vital. That's super important because it bleeds over in time. And we got to be careful. Our far fringe people, if we will, they're kind of like, they have a place too, because we can call them the canaries in the coal mine if you want. They'll be the people who are going to find the first thing to alert us to. However, delivery is super important. I have a 11-year-old daughter, and we talk about this all the time. Delivery is important. How you deliver what you're trying to tell your classmates, how you deliver, how you think you need this to set up, how you deliver asking for something from us makes all the difference. And that's the same thing. You might find something that is super important and has to be alerted to, but can we deliver it in a way that is digestible, that people are open to receiving? And sometimes it's like dropping little nuggets, right? We just need to drop a nugget rather than having a fire hydrant vomit on us with everything. So then we're so confused or so turned off that we just shut it off completely. And that goes for both sides. We have always witnessed pendulums swing from one side to the other. And I don't even know if we'll ever hit middle. One time, this was early 20s, I joked we're going to start seeing the pendulum doing this instead, because that's just how it feels, right? It's going back and forth. It's like the swing set, that ultimate goal on the playground, to try and flip the swing around the full stretch. Yeah. And that is coming from a lot of that, the side to side bashing, if you will. And in the end, they're almost both in the exact same psychological place as each other. They're mirroring each other right now. And the rest of us are just sitting back and okay, what's going to happen next?
And that's leadership right now, really. Leadership in politics. I don't care the States, Canada, Alberta, wherever you are, that's what's going on. Is everyone's pointing a finger at the other person, but no one's pointing a finger back at them. And everyone's just fighting and scrapping, and you do this and you do this and you do this, but they don't say, I do this and I do this and I do this. I'm going to say something that might be a little unpopular, actually. In the last provincial Alberta election, if I was the queen saying, this is what we're going to do with this election, I would actually put Rachel Notley and Danielle Smith, who are really, Rachel Notley is a smart woman and Danielle Smith is brilliant. And I would put those two very smart women at a table 50-50, not one more than the other. And I would have put them both at the table and said, okay, Now I want you to use all this brain power, and instead of working against each other, work with each other and try and come at it from two different perspectives to bring unity and to bring positive change for everyone, not just one side or the other. And yeah, might be unpopular because, I said that Rachel Notley is, a bit of a smart woman and she's got smart qualities, but she's also got dumb qualities. Same with Danielle Smith. She's got smart qualities. And it's like all of us, right? I'm smart in some areas and I'm dumb in some areas. When we start building the bridges and working together, having collaboration instead of this division, I think that we would be in a better place.
Yeah, we all have our own blind spots, right? I for sure have my blind spots. I'm not trying to speak from this like high and mighty pedestal. It's just an awareness piece in the end. And I think that comes down to also in your leadership. So, okay, we can't have them 50 sharing the role. You're touch on like a small snippet of the concept of a holacracy, which I think is a genius concept and would be amazing if we moved into it one day. That's a whole other conversation. So think of it like Bitcoin. So it's a decentralized voting system, if you will, and you never have one guaranteed leader. So you could have, let's just use a two-party system just for ease. So we have our conservatives who are really good with fiscal management, budgetary stuff, and fiscal planning. But we've got our liberals who are amazing at like social programs and that community, or at one point we're good at the community concepts and social programs. I feel like they've veered a little bit too far, but we'll bring them back. It's okay. And so what happens is through the decentralized voting, which now through the power of technology, we could do it as an app-based item or an app-based capability. However, you could use Canada Post as a mail-in ballot system as well. And it could be set up that it is every 6 months or quarterly voting, like time to vote, who's doing a good job at what. And those people who are doing a good job keep their jobs. Those people who are not doing a good job, guess what? You're fired. You're done. We need to be bringing someone else in. And it comes down to where if our liberals continue to do a good job in that social realm, then they get to continue taking it over. If we're witnessing their conservatives are actually doing a good job of funding it and going into social, okay, then they get to lead into that. But it's a constantly evolving thing with no 4-year guarantee. You have no guaranteed job. You have to be proving your worth. And in fact, truly, with zero external influence, are creating that system and are making that system function effectively. And you can definitely have, by way of our personal tracking system, social insurance number, and so forth, a proof of citizenship in that entire voting process. So we could eliminate external other country infiltration at the same time.
Okay, so I vote you the next Queen of Canada because that sounds brilliant to me.
It wasn't me that learned about it, or that first I had someone else actually at that party that kind of educated me about it. I was like, this is genius. We need to start doing this. And honestly, it would be best for probably every G7 country to start operating that way. I mean, we're looking at an entire reform process. But we can do it. We have the technology there. So why aren't we using it? And I'm pretty sure it's somewhat similar to like Star Wars, if we remember as closely as possible to some of its structure too.
Yeah, I've actually never watched those movies.
There you go.
Which is, yeah, I've watched like Divergent and The Hunger Games.
See, I haven't watched those, so.
I'm being a warrior. That's why I can be actually very quite. Someone said, "Oh, Dawn, you're so passionate," and I said, "Yeah, I'm passionate, and I'm passionate positive, but." With every positive, there sometimes is a negative. And yeah, one of my jobs I left, I kicked a stool across the building because, of injustice. So yeah, I can big. And so I think that's brilliant. Just bringing people together. And you're right. With technology, we can do this more. We, the people, have the power to change our society. We don't necessarily need a left and right government to tell us what to do. We need to be the change. And that brings it into, I guess, where what I'm doing is I'm coaching people how to grow food and have chickens and do all the things to become more self-reliant. And when you've got extra produce in your garden, you can share with your community. And so, yeah, like what I'm doing and what you're doing by bringing people together is all really the same thing in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to just teach people that you can actually safely, confidently get politically involved, be politically vocal. You can have those discussions. You can be a business owner and still have a political leaning. You can still advocate. I mean, what would have happened had in, I don't know what, let's just say 2022. I'm sure it was sooner than that. But if a business owner said, no, that's ethically incorrect and I do not stand by it, so I'm not going to play your game. What happened if every business that in their heart of hearts, in their gut, felt that, just said no? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd be here.
No. And that's just it. So I had a store, I did farmers markets. I had the farm and the farmers markets, but I owned a store, 2 stores actually. And how we ran it in my store was we had we put up a little plexiglass just to appease the bureaucracy. But if with my staff, most of my staff were on the same page as me, not all of them even, but most of them were. And when a customer walked in with a mask on, my staff put theirs up, not because of the bureaucracy and not because of the government, but because of respect and kindness for that individual that was walking through the store. And then when someone walked in without mask on, their masks came down because we didn't believe in we didn't believe in the shit either, right? So that's just it. It was a respect. So my business didn't follow the rules. We didn't follow the mandates. I actually got into a fight with a health inspector over COVID. I was running a market down in Calgary, and I'd written an email to this health inspector, and I said in the email, just because something is law or mandate doesn't make it moral or ethical. And when I saw her at that market, I said, did you get my email? She's like, I don't like you, Dawn. And I'm like, you don't have to, but because I touched a nerve, right? Just because something is a law or a mandate doesn't make it moral or ethical. And yeah, I guess we could get into where the morals and ethics come from, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, and your morals and ethics come straight from your core values. And I can guarantee you, if I were to sit down and ask a room of 10 people, maybe one will be able to confidently list what their current core values are. And that's a huge thing, is we need to start going through, what are my core values? And we need to understand that core values change over time. They will shift. Big life events are going to change your core values. I started a gym when my child was 3. My core value clearly was not family. It was still in that very masculine, high achieving, high performer mindset that athlete was. And it was in, I will grind through this and I will sacrifice all so that later on the success will be there, right? So there's a negative side to delayed gratification out there. And then COVID hit and family is number one. My child does not go to childcare. We do not, I make every effort to be home when she arrives home from school. And it's not out of protectionism. It's just so she knows that I'm there, that her safe people are there. And I wasn't providing that when she was 3. And it's so funny when we look back at that was a core value that was really out of alignment. So where in my business were things not aligning as well? And I mean, there were codependent relationships that were developed because I wasn't actually creating a healthy relationship with the people that mattered most. So I needed false ones instead. How sad is that? But to say that, that's how important it is to reevaluate our core values as well. And to be able to have that understanding and that self-understanding of how do we function and how do we operate. I was starting to tear up talking about my family, but that's because that's how important it is. And it's those are your keys, those are your tools. And if you're going to be discussing a topic where you start to feel emotionally charged, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It means that you're on the right track. And it means that if you just have some tools in your belt and some extra little key things that you can pull out when you feel like it's getting really elevated, then we can function and make it through that conversation rather than wanting to shut it down, because heaven forbid we get caught crying or being saying the wrong thing. We're human. We're going to say the wrong thing. But we also have ways to say, you know what, I don't have the actual information in front of me and I want to be able to give you the facts before I say anything. So I'm going to try and find it because I know I have it saved, and then I'll send it to you. And that's a respect thing right there, because we're not lying. We're not making shit up. And we're just being honest that I know it's there. I don't remember it, but if I'm going to push on this, I want to make sure that it's factual. And so I will connect with you after. And that also helps us create a safe buffer in what could be a tense conversation, because It gives space and time for the person to think about it. It lets them digest the information in its totality on their own. And then always just make it so that I'm here to talk more when you're ready. And how powerful is that? Just to know that you're holding space for someone, or on the receiving end, that someone is holding space for you to breach that conversation in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got several friends like that. Like a lot of my close friends and a lot of my people that I love the very most in my life are very different than me. And we send each other things, back and forth, and it goes back and forth. And sometimes it's on, Facebook or whatever, where you can just have a moment to read it and ponder it and then respond. Yeah. And it goes both ways. There was also one point during COVID, one of my good friends came over and we just knew that certain topics were off limits that night. Like it was just in one of those really high, intense, really stressful times. And she came over and we talked about everything else under the sun. We built our relationship. We had connection. We did all these things. So we built all this connection. We had a great conversation, did what we needed to do that night, which was love on each other. And it was till the very end of the night, we both said, yep, certain topics were off topic tonight because we just knew it. We didn't even have to communicate it. We just both knew it. And before she left, I said to her, I started to cry. And I said, if something really crazy goes down, will you hide my children? And that was a very real, raw moment for me. Because we didn't know, right? We didn't know when we were in that time and place, we didn't know. And that's honestly because I started to cry and I was genuinely that afraid because I was an anti-vaxxer, because I didn't follow the narrative, because I didn't go with the crowd. I was genuinely afraid of what would happen to my children. And I said to her, will you protect my children? Because I knew she is vaxxed and she's all the things and she's following all the protocols. And I knew she would protect my children. And she said, absolutely, Dawn. Absolutely, I will protect your children. And that's what I needed to hear from my friend at that moment. And then she said to me, it just makes me so concerned and worried that you are this afraid. And she said, I just don't understand. And then we came to the conclusion, if she took my phone for the day, or if I took her phone for the day, we would be getting very different messages and very different pictures relating to that division. But just at that moment, at the end of the day, we could just have that conversation and connect on such a huge emotionally charged conversation that we couldn't have for the rest of the evening. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I remember that moment too, because it would have been around the same time where we were trying to figure out, like, we're close to the mountains. And so which cabin within the extended family do we try to get access to? And who's got what skills and how many guns can we bring? To be totally honest.
I just got chills, honestly, because I think that's what people don't understand. So if you're not of the same mindset of us, like just take a moment, take a breath and hear what we're saying. We are smart women. We know we're not foolish. And this is honestly deep down to our core, how we were feeling is, where can we hide and what can we do? And that shows how big of a thing it was. People always say, you had a choice, or, it wasn't that bad. And they play it off sometimes, but that's literally how we were feeling is, how can I hide my family? And that's how deep it went within our core. And so, of course, we're going to act out in some irrational ways once in a while, because that's how we were feeling at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, every single person experienced it in their own manner and in their own way. And you're bang on that we were all receiving information from different directions and different ways. And the other thing is, like, it was all so fast. And that was the biggest thing. My brother-in-law was down from Edmonton. So Edmonton is like a very different mindset than Southern Alberta. Thankfully, he's a very smart guy. It's amazing that he's doing what he's doing, but he loves what he's doing. So we can't stop him from that. He works in a bike shop and he's 50, but he's an amazing guy. And we were talking about, because that was at the same time that Trump was heavily trolling Canada and becoming the 50. And he's like, what do you think would happen? I'm like, you got to think there would be like an immense national grieving. Like, it will be a type of grieving that we have not seen or will ever really understand. And the problem too is that we're basically in some form of warfare as it is right now, based on the psychology, because rewind back when war was physical, you didn't really receive any news until 6 months later, unless you were right there. Whereas now we're receiving everything immediately, and then it's twisted immediately. And so our brains are not even designed to take in the amount of information that's coming at us, let alone how to properly decipher what is fact, what is, oh my gosh, fabricated, and all of these other things too. So like, there's so much in there that human psychology alone. I mean, if I was a sociologist, I would be having a heyday right now running studies on all of this, because there's so much of an impact. And access to the information or the stuff that's being fed to us is one key component there. And I'm sorry, but this is not new. Done back in the 18th and 17th century as well. Kings and queens hired artists to portray portraits that were not true. Like Napoleon winning one of the wars, it's a fabricated image. That's not what it actually looked like, by way of the war documentation guy that followed him and wrote about it. It doesn't align. So we have to have an understanding of history and how it functions too, within how we move forward for all of these things, because they all just a lesson, or to some degree, they all align in the process too.
I was watching last night Criminal Minds, so on Prime or whatever, going back many, many years. And last night was on a killer and how she was on Facebook and all these things. And there was a quote at the end of the movie, and I don't exactly remember what it means, but it talked about how the internet is basically a brand new form of anarchy. And I Googled the word anarchy, and I was like, we're probably 10 years after that episode released. And I'm like, it's true. We are more mixed up than ever before because of all the things that are coming to us. And it's all at our fingertips, and we can just comment and and spew it back out and twist it. And then you get into some of these videos where, you have to really figure out, is that a real video, or was that generated, or what is going on? And so we're having to process, as a human being, we're having to process so much more. And it's just mixing us up completely, and the psychology behind that. And it wouldn't surprise me if there are bigger nefarious things going on. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but you never know, right? You just got to take a step back. And that's when it comes to being this tinfoil hat. I see some people that have tinfoil hats, and they're afraid, and they're trying to pull back in, and they're trying to, they're afraid. It's fear-based. And for me, I'm not fearful. I'm not fearful of it all. I just take a step back. I'm not afraid. I have a belief system in God and Jesus. And so that's my grounding, and that's where I'm at. And I just take a step back and go, I hope I'm wrong, but if I'm not, I'm taking these steps. I'm, planting food for myself. I'm raising chickens, doing these things. And I'm building and strengthening my community around me, the people around me, the sphere of influence that I can have. So I'm doing what I can do within my realm. And actually, at the end of the day, when it comes to the big things and Trump taking over Canada and all of those things, I have no control in that. I got to let it ride and let it go, and, just let it be, and not let that fear consume my life.
What I love most too, though, is all of this has now helped us have an experiential proof that if we speak up, we're still here. If we ask really curious questions, we're still here. If we try to be a bridge from one side to the other, we're still here. If we have a disagreement with someone, we're still here. And it has also opened up our innate understanding of how self-sufficient we can be if we are willing to put forth a little bit of that effort. And that starts with conversation too, and having that conversation with ourselves first. Who am I? What is it that triggers me? What is it that sets me off? What is it that I just like, if you were to destroy this thought pattern, I will stand in front of that bulldozer and you'll have to run me over first. What are those things? And it's so beautiful that it has actually brought us back to ourselves and back to realizing that if we take care of ourselves and take care of our communities and our families, Well, we're strengthening the entire province, the entire nation, because strong communities are what build those countries and those spaces. It's not the country that makes the people, it's the people. And if we're so disgruntled with the current politics, well, we need to look at ourselves and ask, what was I doing the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years? Was I having open conversations? Was I speaking with my MPs and my MLA? So how can I take that as a lesson that I need to be engaged and involved, because the politics is everywhere. We're not going to avoid it, but we need to start realizing that having a healthy relationship with it is what helps us function and become those strong communities that therefore make the country.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on talking to MPs and MLAs. I'll tell you this, I had a greenhouse, a 36,000 square foot greenhouse. My natural gas bill was not small,
No.
I can remember one bill I got one year. It was really particularly bad. It was $12,000 for the month. And then I opened it up the next month because I couldn't afford to pay it. And I owed $22,000 in gas. And so we got, fast forward a couple years after that. And Rachel Notley came into power and she brought in the carbon tax. And I phoned that woman's office and left a message. I phoned her like constituent's office and I got an answering machine, which was really quite fun, because I left a message on her answering machine every day for 6 weeks. And if I missed a day, I phoned twice the next day and left a message. My middle name is Tenacious. But that's the thing. When we want change, we have to start speaking up. And it wasn't rude messages. It wasn't unkind messages. It was just things like, sorry, I didn't call you yesterday. I was at a farmer's market talking to customers about food and food prices and the carbon tax. What's going to happen with this carbon tax and your food pricing and how it's going to go up. And I did that for 6 weeks. And the board that I was on, the greenhouse board, they actually went up to bat with her. And we were the only industry in Alberta that got her to change the policy for our industry, thankfully. And it's because the squeaky wheel got the grease. And it wasn't disrespectful. It wasn't unkind. It wasn't rude. It wasn't, it was just having plain conversation, and they heard, they listened. Whereas I think if we would have come at her with, bulldozer and you're so wrong and you're so awful and you're so stupid and you're so, then she would have put her back up against the wall and went, I'm not listening to you. I'm not going to hear you. And so, yeah, it's building the bridges and creating the change.
Yeah. And the other thing too is coming with a solution. So it's very possible. I mean, we touched on it. We didn't use this term, but our politicians live in silos. We live in silos. Really, our zone of genius is within a silo. And so what happens is we have one side that is making policy and, regulation guidelines, but they're forgetting that even though they might be talking to the big stakeholders, they're forgetting the smaller stakeholders. And so we need to be able to kind of like cut open a door in our silo so that there's an exchange of thoughts instead. You can stay in your zone of genius, but there's absolute beauty and pure progress when we start bringing in other thoughts and other methods. It's like hydroponics, right? For the longest time, that was not really considered in farming, whereas now we could grow entire heads of lettuce on a hydroponic columnar growth system. Why are we doing that on every apartment balcony or inside every corner of an apartment, right? Like, why aren't we creating these things or just saying this technology is here because I learned it from probably a pot grower who then took it into, I can also make my own food. And it's just blending those silos. And that's the beauty thing about when we become active as citizens within our political, and I'm going to say politics because it's broad reaching, but there's so many functions, even within our own industry, and say like, hey, I see the issue. Here's a solution that I think will work. Are you willing to discuss it further? Well, you just did their job for them. Chances are they're going to talk with you.
Yeah. So I was a hydroponic farmer. I had 36,000 square feet of hydroponics and I built a lettuce bed and all that kind of stuff. One thing I was thinking when you were just talking here is it's talking to the front lines. So I worked for a larger corporation this summer and I got frustrated with the leadership and the management. And the reason I did is because I've been a leader. I've had 30 people on payroll. I've done the leadership thing. And really, the part that frustrated me the most is there was such a disconnect between the top and the bottom. And really, the most important person in that entire operation, that entire, billion-dollar company, was the person at the very bottom. doing the work. And that's the disconnect, is you've got people at the top who think they know what they're talking about and get high on their britches. And I know the answers and this is the way it is. And you don't know what you're talking about because you're utterly, really what I learned in business is without my team, I had nothing. Without people that worked with me on my team together as a team, I had nothing. And so they were important. They were the most important part of the farm, was the people in the field picking the weeds. They were important. And then it just kind of trickled up from there. And when we empower people, when we lift them up in leadership, when we go to the person on the bottom, when we go to the nurse and the doctor and the teacher and the, all these quote unquote problem areas in society right now that they just don't have enough or whatever, they can tell you what the problem is. They can tell you where the issue is. And a lot of times it's pointing the finger upward to management, sorry to say, leadership, management, government, things like that. And it's because the leadership is gone and it's become more of a dictatorship or more of a I know better than you. And so we're not going to lift you up and we're not going to listen to you. And I think that's where the problem in society is because we're looking upward and we should be looking at each other and we should be looking downward. And how can we lift each other up? How can we bring each other up?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's not a direct quote, but it's successful business owners take the janitor out to dinner.
Absolutely. Because that janitor, without a clean bathroom, it trickles upward. Yeah.
They also see things that you don't see. And they hear things you don't hear. And if they're doing a good job, that's because they love the company that they're with. And in inflated egos, they always walk around with the I can leave, I can go anywhere. But what about the person that needs that job? And that is, by the nature of our current structure, the person on the bottom.
Yeah. And it gets back to, you were at a gym, you were working, you were doing your things. We've kind of lost touch in society. We've almost had to go from, we used to be able to do in a family unit, we used to be able to do it, like live off of one income. And now it's almost to the point that we have to live off of two. And that's really we're in a scary place right now because, women are having to get into their masculine, men are being squashed. I'm sorry. I'm all for strong men and masculinity, healthy masculinity, men leaders who want to lift their families and lift their people up. But we're being forced with the way society is and with how things are getting tighter and tighter and tighter, that a single income isn't doing it for people anymore. And that's a way of control as well, that, if you're not happy at your job or you're not, fulfilled, or if you want to spend more time with your child, you're not even physically able to. And this is going to be the downfall of the family, which I think will be the downfall of society.
Yeah. And I mean, in one aspect, we're witnessing it right now. I love how humans, though, we still have a little too late change of heart, but it's just in time. And I mean, we could see that even in the Bible. We see that in a lot of things, that is how we function because we were given free will. Sometimes we have to pay for our free will.
Yeah, it's true. And you're right. In the Bible, God will let you go so long, go. And then he'll go, and he'll bring you back. Not in an unkind you whatever way. And there's consequences to actions, but he just always draws you back. And I know for myself, whenever I've gone through many hard things over the last several years, and I've always brought it back to God. I need help. I'm trying to do this on my own and I can't do this without you.
Yeah. And we are designed to thrive in community and in connection with others too.
Yeah. Okay. So just to wrap it up here, I'm just looking at the time and it's gone so fast.
It has.
I honestly, normally I'm okay, we got a few more minutes. And I just see it was 10 minutes a few minutes ago. And now it's 53 minutes. So I'm whoa, wow, I could sit and talk to you for hours probably. So. Okay, so just in closing here, any last thoughts, any last things?
Well, I think right now we're not in a safe point, even though we're headed into an election. I mean, the way the entire thing is structured, an election is going to be happening before the summer. Start really first, if you're uncomfortable talking about political parties, talk about their policies, talk about their platforms, because in the end, policy becomes the law. If it gets passed, it becomes the driver for how countries function. So understand those policies, go read them all. Yes, it's boring. However, it's vital that is your future right there. It also allows you to go and say, you said you were going to do this and you haven't even touched on it. And that's the part of holding our politicians to account. And then sit down with them if you can. Connect with them. They're going to be in a big campaign push for getting that election and winning it. So why not try and sit down, host a town hall, bring people in, have those conversations, and don't be afraid of it because you're going to survive and you might just find the people that are meant for you rather than the people who just happen to be there. And I don't know about you, Dawn, but I would rather have a really good quality connection and friendship with people that I know I can move forward with through thick and thin than just have people who, well, we kind of get along, but I wouldn't tell her if I was on my deathbed. I don't want that in my life. I want the people that I know, even if they looked at me, they're going to be like, all right, how can I help you? Because they know me so well. And being able to have that courage and confidence to be able to have those conversations, to express our concerns on the political realm, business realm, whatever it may be, without fear or with a little less fear, that's what starts pulling in the people who are meant for us and really calmly, casually letting those people who aren't just kind of move on. And that'll set you up for success no matter what. And then finally, if you need help, and if you want to learn how to, at the very least, even understand a policy, I'm your gal. So you can look up Fearless Changemakers or go to Szabon.com. So it's SZABON.com. And you can find it all on there. And I'm happy to have conversation, welcome you into the community, all of that good stuff.
Love it. I love it. And thanks for putting a shout out. So yeah, go follow Lisa and yeah, let's start building bridges and having those conversations and the hard things. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, the hour flew by and I could just talk to you more, but yeah, we'll cut it off here. Maybe we'll have to have you on again sometime.
Sounds good.
Please come on. We should do this because, we can talk about the hard thing and just with different glasses and different perspectives. So thank you so much for your time. Really, thank you for being here. And yeah, I look forward to more hard conversations.
Me too. Thank you so much, Dawn. This was wonderful.